people.
Yeah.
That might have been a bit disrespectful to them. But,
Oh, yeah. I think they can hear us now. They're looking.
right.
Yeah. Got a thumbs up from Jason.
Yep. All good. Okay.
Talking about you, not to you. It looks like Gordon's here now too.
Oh, yep.
Anyway, I'm gonna go back do some work.
Welcome everybody to today's Fees and Charges Deliberations meeting, Wednesday 22nd of May. I see we have Councillor Erin Wilson-Collins online, Gordon Lambert, Councillor online, and Mark Vincent online. Is there any apologies? Okay, no apologies.
Sorry, through the chair, we do have apologies today from Councillors Nair, Peniora and Williams.
Okay. So we'll have a mover for that.
I'll second.
Okay, Larson and Howard, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carried. Confirmation of the agenda. Can I have a mover for that?
Yes.
Councillor Larson, seconder. Councillor Howard, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried. Any conflicts of interest to declare? No. Okay, just have to bring it up on my computer here.
So, Mr. Mayor, there's only one report on here, and it might be, while you do that, it might be good to hand over to the staff. I think you're going to do the moving and seconding of the motion towards the end. Put your people to start.
I'm happy to do that. Thank you.
Just hand over to the team.
Okay, well, it's, you know me, and this is Joy Hewlett, who does all our work with fees and charges, and she's going to be presenting to you today, and I'm supporting her.
Good morning. The fees and charges went out for public submission for a 30-day period, and following that submission period closing, during the submission period, we received 9 submissions. So we've they fell into themes, as you see on the front page: dog control, litter, events on public land, food stall holder fees, and there was some feedback around community housing in the Dargaville and Rurawai area. Attachment A has the submissions that came in as they came in with Word, and then attachment B, we have raised the issue, and then staff have provided us with comment on the issue raised.
We're moving to questions. Okay, any questions on the matters that have been raised? I just wanted to ask you about
Litter?
see that we only have the ability to fine to a maximum of $400. Is that correct?
That's through the Litter Act 1977. It says no infringement fee shall exceed $400.
Right. Just the point is, I've just come back from Vietnam, and the only mar of the trip was still litter everywhere, and I thought that it's one thing we in this country that we should value is the fact that we don't have a lot of litter. And I was talking to C.E. Maris about the fact we had 6 infringements last year. So let's hope that that situation doesn't deteriorate. But obviously we have our hands tied in terms of being able to impose any higher infringement penalties.
I have a quick question, please, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, the second submitter, Sharon George, has made the comments that I've looked over the proposed increase and note that mostly a standard 3.5% increase has been applied. Is that in fact correct?
Yes, that's right. That was accepted in the last meeting. That was
Okay, yep. I do have memory gaps at times. No, that's fine. I mean, I thought, I had to say that as an extension, I thought that, no, it's not a question, so it's all right. I'll leave it.
Councillor Larson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I just want to come back to the matter of litter. Our fee, it appears, is considerably lower than what could be charged for litter. Is that correct?
I believe that litter is charged per litre and volume escalating for
Up to a maximum of $400.
dollars, yes.
So you're charging $120 per 1 litre, as is in the report.
That's right.
What is the cost to our compliance and enforcement team of attending a fly tipping event and cleanup? I mean, must be significant, is it?
It is, so I'll hand that over to George, compliance, to talk about that, because I think it might be the right person monitoring. And might have more awareness than we do, yeah.
Good morning, Your Worship, Councillor Larson. Yeah, with the litter infringements, we do have just to speak to the graduation fees that start from $120. The actual fact is we have the limit under the Act up to $400. By council resolution, we could actually set that limit for the lowest fee in $5 increments.
Yes.
So we could have $380 for the lower fee and graduate up to the $400. Anything beyond that would be a prosecution, where under conviction, the infringements could be between $5,000, $7,500 for animal remains that are dumped, up to $20,000 for a commercial dump. So just in terms of the cost to council, what happens at this stage is we have Hyper Refuse who check the black bags. Any bags that are unofficial bags are deemed to be abandoned refuse. So they have the right to check those bags to look for evidence of the person responsible for dumping that bag. They do charge a fee for searching those bags. I believe that's in order of, it used to be $30, it could be $50 now for a fine. So there's that. If they do that particular job, then the rest of the costs are the administration costs for a administration officer to issue an infringement notice and use the evidence that has been collected and store that on record for that purpose. If it's a reported dumping, then a officer will have to travel out to do an investigation to find out, the extent of that particular dumping and the location, the dumping itself. So if they do that and we can't find evidence of the offender and the dumping is on council land, then council inevitably has to clean that mess up. I think the last large recovery was out at Te Māori area, the West Coast, and it was a long-term dumping in an old cave that...
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, the gum diggers used to use for cooking and they used to cohabit in that. I think that was $30,000 for that cleanup, and that'd be an area that was utilised as just a hole that they were dumping all their rubbish in, the locals, for quite a number of years. So there could be a cost depending on whether we find an offender. It may be that if it's a large extent, we would then consider a prosecution. as opposed to a lower cost where we could recover the refuse and on charge that to the offender.
Okay, so chances of having a 1 litre amount the size of a small milk bottle with some identification on it, is that fair? You'd normally have a bag of rubbish or a pile of rubbish.
So we would capture the 1 litre fee. Would be if you observe someone throwing a cigarette packet out the window of a vehicle or dumping it on the roadside as they're walking along. So that's we would capture that as a $120 fine, as opposed to a plastic shopping bag or a paper shopping bag now, which some people have still been observed over time putting their household rubbish into a public litter receptacle. And if they're observed doing that, then if it's only a small bag which they can squeeze in, then it's likely to be a $120 fine.
Yeah. In any event, any fee that we collect from anybody is going to be chewed up many times over by staff time and the fee from the refuse company and all that sort of stuff.
Yes.
How would you feel about the fee being set at the maximum of $400 regardless? Would that seem appropriate or reasonable, or do you think that's excessive?
I would say that would be reasonable. What we do find is that there are two matters here. I guess essentially when there's a downturn in the economy, we see a greater extent of littering because people just don't want to pay. But a number of people don't want to pay to take their rubbish to a tip anyway, so they'll just dump down the side road somewhere. But it seems to increase. We found that after the 2008 global economic downturn, that there was a large increase in the incidences of littering in public places. The other issue that we do have is that we can issue fines, but the majority of the times those fines don't get paid.
Yeah.
So what happens after the fines follow a 28-day period. So you get 28 days to pay the fine, then a 28-day reminder period. If they fail to pay that fine, we have to lodge a $30 fee with the Ministry of Justice to take that fine on and impose it as a court fine. There's still no guarantee that we're going to receive the monies from those fines. More often than not, we don't, because of the calibre of the people that have been involved in littering anyway. So that's an additional cost to council, is $30 each infringement that we would send to court.
Sure. And with that lower fee of $120, I mean, the chances of actually packet of KFC or a cigarette packet out a window is pretty remote, isn't it? I mean, you wouldn't be pursuing someone in a car and trying to get them to pull over and stuff. Or...
Yeah, it's really just that would only apply to an officer actually doing that particular.
And being able to have enough evidence to sort of prove that it has come from sorts of things.
Yes.
It's quite hard to enforce. Yeah.
Generally, if it's a vehicle and you're passing a vehicle or you're following a vehicle, if you're able to secure, if you're following a vehicle, then you've got time to take note of the registration number, and legally it will be the registered owner of that vehicle is responsible for any illegal activities that are undertaken. So we would identify the registered owner of that vehicle, and that registered owner would be the individual that would receive the infringement.
Right. Yeah. We do have this submission that suggests we go to $2,500, which obviously we can't do, but $400 is within the scope of that submission, so that could be relied on. Just raise that. Maybe we'll get some feedback once we get to next stage. I see you have other questions, Your Worship, so I'll quiet now. Thanks.
Councillor Lambert's had his hand up there patiently. Councillor Gordon Lambert.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear, Gordon.
With these fees, perception is everything, and with the modern generations coming through, and especially a large, I say, non-conservative sort of population now, I'm going to speak to an example which one of our shopkeepers gave. He went up to the local refuge place with 3 bags of rubbish to be dumped up at Awakino Road. He was told that it was going to cost him $280. So the height of doing that, and the fact that now the dump at the Awakino Road is now closed a further day, so it's only open for 4 days from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And that doesn't include weekends. We've got a problem there in that it is worth a crack now with only a $400 fine. What's your thoughts on that?
Councillor Lambert, I'm surprised that the fee was $280 unless it was they were quite bags. I'm not sure what the fees are because they are subject to the management process, and the solid waste team manages the Awakino site and the Akaroo site.
Not as shocked as what he was. So then
yes.
he carried on in his van and drove to Whangarei, and it cost $36 to dump it there. So in light of that, I'm just wondering if our fees aren't keeping. I'm worried that it's going to be worth a crack now.
Your worry is that with fees that are too high, you're going to get a lot more fly tipping, Gordon.
Yeah, the fees up at the dump are too high and the fines are too low, and the fly tipping will just go through the roof now. So I think we've lost a balance here somewhere along the line, and we probably need to have a good review and look at everything along this. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, that's the fees for dumping are kind of separate from what we're looking at here, but they do have a relationship. I would recognise that too. I mean, there's an article in the latest Northern Advocate this morning about the amount of illegal rubbish is being dumped in the districts, and that could be in relationship to the fact that they don't want to spend the fee to dump it.
Yeah.
Councillor Wilson, you have a question? Wilson,
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thanks, staff. I just want to I don't know what I'm doing here. I'll try and put it into a question. I guess it's correct that the government, the central government, has put in place increased waste levies that are meant to discourage people from actually disposing to landfill. And we haven't been able to, as our role in local government, been able to minimise any of that waste either through education or improved recycling or circular economy issues there. Would that be a fair summarisation? There is an imbalance between the cost, which I agree is exorbitant to be dumping waste, but there's a purpose behind that, right?
So to answer your question, we don't operate the refuse stations. They're run independently, but I think they run their fees through council. We don't do a big education ourselves. We haven't got the people on board. We've only got one person looking after waste on our team.
Mm-hmm.
So education is not that great by council. It's by other groups.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I don't know what else. I'm not in charge of the solid waste team, so I can't really answer.
That's fine. That's all good. And the other relevant thing I think as well is isn't it correct that there was a large piece of work done, especially in the Dargaville area with the PGF funding, of waste being collected, litter being collected on the arterial routes heading into town, which unfortunately is already being reversed. So there is, whilst there probably isn't as much litter by people dropping things in the street, in the actual streets of the townships, we do have a bit of an issue with litter from cars and in the drains and things on the outskirts of towns.
So you'll see in the report, it talks about there's been 6 litter infringements issued current financial year. So I'm not sure what those related to, but I think they would be dumping of litter somewhere in our community. That would be the key things. We're not normally charging people for this. We don't see the smaller litter infringements.
But it's still there, is what I'm questioning. Thank you.
I could add to that and to say that, that although there have been 6 litter infringements issued, that's only because we've been able to identify 6 offenders. So, there's more than likely to have been 5, 6, 7 times more incidents, but no evidence to identify the offender.
Thank you.
Councillor Howard.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As we work through this, I mean, it seems to me that if 2 or 3 points here, but first off, that landfill over there at Dargaville, if they're charging $280, I mean, even though they are a private enterprise, it does seem to be out of kilter. And I mean, the encouragement surely we would have as council is to be reasonable, because we want people to use it in the absence of anything else. We want people to use it. We don't want to put them off and have them. Well, I mean, Gordon Lambert's contact example may have been one of just very, very few driving all the way to Dargaville, to Whangarei to get rid of his rubbish, whereas presumably many others would just have found a place to quietly dump it. So I'm sort of going back to the maximum that was discussed earlier on. And I think that whilst we can try and work with the private enterprise owners of the landfills and encourage them to be reasonable in their prices, if we're seeing a prevalence, and, we're playing a losing game, as I see it, because we don't have the resource and personnel to go checking on people or catching them, as you say, George, the number that we've caught, and we probably haven't been paid. You want me to ask a question?
Well, no, I might have put my hand up because I was going to speak when you had.
Okay, yeah, okay. So I'm just getting it. I'm sort of advocating for this 400 figure on the basis of what we see. But, our resources are so limited. We're fighting a losing game. I feel that's frustration. The other question I do have is through the report, there's 2 or 3 instances of reference to other councils. Do we need to have reference to what other councils do, or can we just stand on our own 2 feet and make our own decisions?
Yeah. Hey, can I interrupt you here a little bit? Because we're kind of veering into fees for disposal of landfill, whereas here we're dealing with litter infringements. But CE Maris has just pointed out to me the litter infringement scale, that's what you would call it, wouldn't you? And so for depositing litter or having deposited litter of less than 1 litre in volume and leaving it in a public place or on private land without the consent, it's a $120 fee.
Yeah.
Depositing litter or having deposited litter of more than 1 litre and less than 20 litres in volume and leaving it on a public place or on private land without the consent of its occupiers, $200. depositing litter or having deposit litter of more than 20 litres and less than 120 in volume and leaving it in on a public place or private land without the consent of its occupier, $300, and then the rest of the scale is all 400. Personally, I'd like to see them all at 400.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because when you do get an issue like George has described, unless there's some fat in there, it's not worth pursuing. Councillor Larson?
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. It is that we have firmly moved into statements on this matter, and I don't think we should belabour it any longer. In that, if we have 6 prosecutions per year, the amount of time and staff time we're using to discuss it is probably now exhausted any savings we've made. But if we can, when we do move a motion here, change the recommendation at point B, sub point 2 on litter fees, put some wording in there that says that the minimum litter fee be set at $400, we can remove this sort of all of that complicated wording here and just simply make it $400.
That's what I would be in support of.
Doing anything more than that, if there's general agreement in the room, online and in person, that's appropriate. But there may be further debate to be had.
Okay, seeing we've gone to statements, let's have them then. Councillor Howard, followed by Councillor Vincent.
Thanks.
Followed by Councillor Lambert.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. And
Can I just pause this for a sec? So, you haven't got a mover and a seconder yet, so we haven't gotten started. We're just trying to flesh out what you want.
Okay, well, let's
move and seconder at that point.
let's roll it back the other way then. Let's modify the recommendation to fit that with what Councillor Larson's suggesting, which I think probably everyone will agree.
Through the chair, is there any other questions on the other items that we've got there, which are dog control or food stalls or events on public land? So before we...
Yeah, good thinking, Sue. Okay. Has anyone got any questions on the other matters that are in the... Councillor Vincent? You're on mute, I think, Mark.
turn your ears on.
Yeah, sorry. I was assuming actually that we would deal with each one separately. However, I think so. Dealing with to help with perhaps the framing of the resolution regarding litter control, I think that a standard $400 fee is something of a blunt tool, and I would be concerned about for a very small amount of litter, the litter control people might be less inclined to impose the fine, given that it seems so out of whack with the scale of the default or breaking the bylaw. So that's my concern there. The main thing I wanted to query in terms of question time is in regard to food licensing fees, as we've had several submissions, and I know most of the people that lodged those submissions just acknowledge that. I wonder if it seems with all of this, we need to think about what is the problem we're trying to solve, what is the issue we're trying to fix, and how we're using our bylaws to achieve that outcome. And one outcome obviously is, I'm sorry if it sounds a bit like a statement, but I'm just leading up to setting the scene, is achieving legal compliance. I'm well aware of that. But also we want to achieve outcomes for our community. And in terms of our mission statement, where we want this to be a great place for people to do business, and we've got this feedback saying the fees are onerous for market storeholders. So what I'm wondering, it's sort of like a Venn diagram. Is there a space in the middle where we can achieve legal compliance on the one hand, but also on the other, that it's not going to be such a barrier to people wanting to give it a go and add some colour and life to our local markets, which we have across the district. So because it's the feedback we've got here is that it actually is something of a barrier. And so I'm just wondering, is there a way in which we can achieve the objective without putting people off, so that we,
So through the chair, I'll call on Fern to come up and talk to that because she works in the food and health area. But also just comment that the council does have the authority to change the fees and charges. And if you want to make them nothing, then we bear all the costs. And what happens is then you have to change the revenue and financing policy so that the general ratepayer pays instead of the stallholders. So you've got to understand that. Yeah.
Yes, well, actually, I think that's one of the, in terms of my Venn diagram analogy, and I knew there were 3 circles, and I guess that's the 3rd circle, isn't it? The thing if we can achieve that as well, because it's well, I recall someone saying back in the deep dark past, what we want to get is from A to Z. We don't necessarily have to tick every letter on the way to get to Z if we can achieve the right result. So that's what I'm looking for. If the process can be made more efficient.
So I'll let Fern talk to the process because it is quite involved for our staff.
Good morning, Worship. Good morning, councillors. Good morning, Mark, is it?
Yes.
Yep. So I understand where you're coming from. However, the process for doing a food verification and managing compliance and food safety is set by the Ministry for Primary Industries. Council carries that out on behalf of the ministry. So they set the guidance around how that is to be carried out. Unfortunately, whether you sell food half of the year or a whole year, obviously the food safety risks are the same. Therefore, the process has to be the same. It is quite a long process in terms of being able to verify all of the air processes, the risks and the hazards involved in food safety. And that does not change, like I said, whether you are trading for 6 months or whether you're trading for, the whole year. They have set the scale around risk. They have different food sectors. And obviously, a cafe is a higher food risk than making jam, but that is set by MPI. So I guess in short, the answer is no, we can't shortcut the process. We can't make it any quicker or easier. What we can do, which is what we do, is support people in terms of giving them guidance and education to help them through that process. The scale is set, so the more compliant you are, the less fees you pay. Obviously, the less compliant you are and the more time and education and enforcement that it takes to get you and to keep the public safe, the more that person will pay.
So just to clarification for the council, are the fees set by MPI or do we set the fees?
We set the fees, but the regime on how that's carried out is set by MPI. So our fees are in line or similar to the other councils around us. I can also say that people are able to be privately verified by a third party. And I can tell you they will be at least 2 to 3 times the amount because we are set, MPI sets what we have to do. So the process we have to go through, we can't shortcut it. And That's, yeah, the bottom line, really.
Thank you for that, Fern. I just see you have got a verification or an annual registration doesn't change, it's 287.
Yeah.
And then you've got a scale there that if there's been no issues, it reverts to an 18-month cycle.
For a food control plan, yeah. So they scale it, Your Worship, on the risk of the business. So obviously, if you're just making coffee, the food safety risks are a lot less than if you're doing a full cafe cooking poultry. And yeah, there's obviously a higher risk to the public and more processes that need to be looked at and checked. So for instance, a coffee cart has a one-off verification. If they're okay, they never get verified again. So that's a one-off fee other than their registration fee. Whereas with a cafe, if they operate well, they go up to 18 months. So that fee is spread over 18 months.
Yeah, my question actually more related to is I think the submitters were saying about the Saturday market. So you've got someone trading 1 day a week, and just in relation to the scale of their operation, the numbers don't really, I can understand how the numbers won't really match up. So I just was, I mean, is there anything, like you mentioned coffee carts, what about coffee carts which actually provide food?
Yeah, so if they provide food, depending on what that food is, they'll move up a scale. So they have national program 1, 2, 3, and then a food control plan. So it moves up with risk. So what I'm saying is the process of verifying them and checking all of those systems are safe and that they're managing the hazards does not change whether you still have to check the same things regardless of whether someone chooses to operate for 6 months or for a year. So if you wanted to reduce the fees, it would have to be subsidised because the process is the same.
Okay,
and
got that.
By MPI. So if we shortcut the process and don't, we will be breaching legally what we should be doing.
I wasn't advocating that. Okay, thank you.
Any further questions?
Yes, I do have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With the verification, I mean, I still have, as with Councillor Vincent, an issue, and I'm just looking across the board. I think that our markets are a vibrant part of what we want: prosperous communities, vibrant communities, and things like that. And I just think that we have to be, yes, we have to follow process, but we have to be very careful that we don't price these operators out. We don't want, I don't know whether anybody has ever stopped, providing their services at a market because the costs, verification and annual fees and all that are too much. I mean, maybe they're not good operators, I don't know. But I'd hate for us to get to a situation. We've got to encourage this as part of the whole community. And so I do wonder, even with the verification, if there is something, because we set the actual rates at the end of the day, MPI don't, whether there is an opportunity to have a look at, as the example of one of these people that she's just one person. And all of these things get gargantuan and big in terms of structure. And, I don't know whether we're able to simplify it in any way, but I mean, I'm just recording a concern that I have about wanting to ensure that we continue the vibrancy of markets in this sense. And I know that is just one small element of the overall verification process. The question I did have with it is in that year one, they pay the verification fee. Do they still pay the licence or registration fee?
Yeah, so registration is set again, MPI has set the system in terms of how registration is paid. So I'll make that clear. That's not council, that's Ministry for Primary Industries. So they set it on, depending on the risk, you might pay, is it just every 2 years or every year, depending on your risk. So what the aim of the Ministry for Primary Industries has been is to try and make it fair in terms of if you are a lower risk business, you require less processes, less to be verified, then you should pay less. Yeah. And that's how they've set it. And the fees reflect that. Yeah, but like I keep trying to, I guess, put across is that it doesn't make any difference how often someone trades. The process is still the same. The time, for the verification, all of that process is still the same. I know it seems unfair, but I guess, that's how it is.
It's standard. No, I understand.
Chair, in answer to your question, this is your opportunity. If you want to reduce the fees, you can do that, but someone else has to pay, and it's the general ratepayer.
Can I come in here? I'm just looking at your scales here. The one that's probably, I would think, because I shared a conversation at the Paparoa market with Mark and some people there. And they were saying that they were paying well over $1,000. But I think the ones that were saying that were probably captured by the food control plan, ready-to-eat food, ice cakes and pastries, right?
Right.
Go down to look at the annual registrations for other things like honey and coffee producers, jams, chutneys, breads.
Yeah.
It's a lot palatable for those store owners to be paying those fees, obviously.
Sorry, can I just add a bit in there?
Sure.
Your worship.
Yep.
So I guess you've got to look at it like this, and I hear this story a lot. If you're running a full-blown cafe, you have other costs, don't you? You have rent, you have staffing, you have other overheads. If you're running a business where you're going to the market and you're selling, and you move into the food control plan bracket because that's your high, you're making food of a higher risk, then you don't have those other costs.
Yeah, that's, and then of course, if you make it too easy for those people, your dedicated 7-day-a-week businesses are going to feel penalised.
Exactly.
So there's two ways of looking at it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Juggling act.
I mean, it also depends what you're selling at the market too. I mean, there's people here selling well-made breads, for example, they sell out in 2 hours and they're making extremely good money.
Yep.
So they'd be on a lower risk if they're selling bread. Yep. But that's how MPI has tried to set the fee so it's fair and reflects that.
Yep.
So, Mr. Mayor, is there something in the narrative that we can get across that even more emphatically that some of these elements are set by central government, and that, we do endeavour in setting the fees to take account of circumstances where we can?
Yes, so just to give a bit of education to it, the Food Act came in 2014, and that whole regime changed how we managed food safety. So before that, it was a simple inspection. It didn't look at process. They reviewed it and decided there needed to be more controls and a better way of reviewing food safety to ensure public safety. When they have done that, they've put a process in place that now requires a verification, which is more time consuming, more in depth, and should improve food safety. So, yeah, in short, council has to follow that regime. We are audited as well every 18 months ourselves to make sure we carry out that process according to the Ministry for Primary Industries standards.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I suppose the discussion point here is it's not about the process really, because the process is the process. Okay, it is about who pays for that process.
Yeah.
And currently those fees are set. You'll see in the report that it indicates so the council charges to recover the cost. 23 financial year, 24% was recovered privately. So 76 publicly funded, okay, 76%. So I suppose the point is if you start, you can absolutely, to Sue's point, you can absolutely change the fees. That's your choice. There are graduated fees here based on logic as well for different types of food, but you can adjust them. I just want to be very clear on that point. That's your decision to make here. It's just who pays. And the cost will increase for the general ratepayer. I'm going to ask Sue a question. I'm sorry, Sue, but I just wonder what the threshold is with your policy here. So could the council reduce an amount for these fees and not affect the policy?
It might, they might reduce the fees, but it mightn't have much effect to the annual plan. I mean, but that's only like 10% of. If you're taking off 10%, if you decided you were going to reduce the fees 50%, then I think that might be a more substantial amount.
And the other question I have, sorry, Mr. Mayor, if I could, the fees that we charge at the moment, how does that compare with our neighbours? Because, you know, all councils run markets. I know Far North do, obviously, Whangarei do, that sort of thing. Do we have that information?
Yes, they're quite comparable. I don't have it in front of me at the moment. Whenever we're looking at an increase, yeah, we're very comparable. As a matter of fact, probably a bit cheaper than others. If under a verification, an environmental health officer finds what they call a corrective action, that's something that is an issue, and it has to. They're given a time frame to address that issue. Some councils charge per corrective action. And some be half a dozen. We don't charge for that. Ours is just a $789 until it's finished.
There's a lot of services that we provide that are not charged. Whereas if you looked at Auckland Council, they charge for every service that's carried out in regards to food safety.
Councillor Howard.
Thank you. So there are a couple of questions, but so to exactly that point is that, again, I just can't help feeling, and I don't know what the narrative is that we put out to the likes of organisers of markets, but you know, there are some positives that are now coming out, and we don't charge all sorts of everything that we could. And I'd like to see actually what is our publicity that goes out to market owners and that they share with all their stallholders about what costs are and things like that. So I think that there is something that we could make out of that. What I'm interested, the question I have is that we have as CEO Maris has identified 76% in the 23 financial year, 76% was recovered private was publicly funded. So how much are we talking about?
I don't think we've got that with us here today. We looked at that in the very beginning and gave you the figures, and I haven't got them.
Yeah, well, yeah.
How much it is, but a lot is unfunded because of the work that's been done. We're not recovering our fees now. It's like glitter.
Okay, look, I'll take one more question. I think we've pretty much covered the issue there. Mark, please.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I just wonder if it's in terms of what someone else commented, it gave me a thought. I think we were probably in the same area. I wonder, even as a gesture, if we made a small reduction, what the implications would be for our budget in terms of the rates bill overall. Because yeah, if we can't disappear the cost, then if it's less of a cost to an applicant, then it's more of a cost to the general ratepayer. And I do think there is an argument, particularly with something like the transitory nature of the markets, what they contribute. There's a public good element there, and that could be acknowledged through some sort of a discounted regime, possibly. I'm just raising that as a possibility that perhaps could we consider that without pushing our revenue and financing policy out of shape.
Yeah, so through the chair, probably if you were going to reduce it by, say, 10%, then that's not likely to affect the revenue and financing policy. And in fact, we'd look at that over the next 2 years and bring it to you for the next LTP to state, well, have we been recovering it or not? But if it was something like 50%, then that's likely to, we'll go back and calculate that, and it would obviously affect our revenue and financing.
Okay.
Before we have statements, is there any further questions regarding the items that we see in front of us?
Well, I don't have any questions, and I'm happy to move a motion now, which is as per the recommendation, except that the item B2 drops out and a new item is added as a new clause B, a D, sorry. I'll pull that up on the screen, Alana.
On the top of my drawer, and there's also
I think.
Mark, you might want to mute your I think you're still on noise.
Look in the top drawer of my.
Okay.
Can I ask a procedural question, please, Mr. Mayor? So, acknowledging Councillor Larson's motion here, I don't, in principle, have any issue with. I am keen to hear about the potential of a reduction, 10%, in the food store holders' fees discussion. So, will that impact motion?
Well, the fact of the matter is it could be amended or amended by agreement. I mean, I think if you're wanting to second it and have that inserted, that could happen seamlessly now.
Yeah, well, that's what
however, I think that the point that you raised is that, you know, it might not have any material impact on our financing policy, but similarly, a 10% reduction is probably not going to have any material impact on the viability of the storeholder either. So if you're wanting to change a figure and no one's raised it, and that's why I've just moved to putting this motion, which figure do you want changed? You need to tell us. So which figure is it?
Well, it is the figure related to the verification fee.
And so where is it in the schedule?
It's on page 12. My point is more, to be very clear, is that I'd rather get back, and I know that Sue has said that, you know, we've had the dollars involved with that 76% publicly funded recovery. I don't recall, I don't think anybody will recall exactly what it was. I'd like to be reminded about just how much we're talking about, because then we'll have a better understanding of scope and really the magnitude of this.
So I mean, without too much more work, then, if we can just amend this so that we have the MPI directed verification food importer fee, is that the one you're talking about? Is it the $789?
Food control plan, yeah, $789.
And you want that reduced by 10%?
I want to review the option to do that.
Well, we have to set it now, so either we're setting the fee or we're not.
All right. Well,
you want it to be $789 $10.10, then we need to put that into this motion.
I did ask specifically that, I'd like to understand what and so I understand this is going to come back to another council meeting. So at that time, we were going to be presented with the figures that are involved with this, and then we make a decision.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, now this is the deliberations, this is where you make the decision. We then create the document for you to finally adopt. So this is the decision-making forum. Can I just say, look, I'm just going to put it out there, so correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure that a 10% reduction is material. If you decide to do a 10% reduction for the food control plan, I mean, you can just do the verification, or you can just do the annual registration fee and verification fee and do a 10% reduction on the food control plan as a possibility. You could decide that today, and I don't think it's going to be a materially difference.
So does it fall under the food stall holder fees section of the motion, or is it a different matter?
Food stall holder fees, doesn't it?
Could I contribute here, Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
Just to try and nail it down, because I think that, following on from Councillor Howard, what if we said it was in terms of what's scheduled, that it'd be a 10% reduction of those figures for the verification fee, which goes from the right through the schedule, because there's different amounts depending on where it fits with the national program 1, 2, and 3, or the food control plan level. So through all those levels, a 10% reduction on the verification fee, and maybe, well, I don't say maybe, I'll put it out there and say a 10% reduction on the annual registration fee, for the rationale that it actually is providing a public good. Is that possible for us to?
A lot of words, Councillor Vincent, that you've given us to insert.
So that it would actually, and I see it as a gesture rather than actually making it, as you say, a material difference to either the council's budget or to decide whether a catering business or whatever would continue or not.
Can I suggest, Your Worship, that we just pause for a moment and let the Chief Executive and Joy work on some appropriate wording that reflects what your
good idea.
Vincent is suggesting, and then see where we land with that. Is that okay?
Let's have a cup of tea and come back in 5. Okay.
Good on you.
Happy with that?
Yep.
confirm that I am moving the motion which is about to be put on the screen, which has been amended by agreement. And second,
Right, what do we got?
I'll second it.
Oh. So,
Can you see that up there, Mark, Aaron, Gordon?
Effectively, if I can through you, Mr Mayor, so what councillor Larson is moved is the minimum fee, litter fee, changing that to 400. So that takes away the graduated scale. And then resolution D agrees to a stallholder's verification fee that is 10% less than the verification fee for the food control plan ready to eat foods.
Yep.
That applies to the stallholders only.
only, yeah, that's good.
Okay, look, we've had plenty of discussion, but if there's anyone that wants to make any further statements, let's do it now. Put your hand up or make a statement.
as the mover, should I do that? Or?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to make a statement. Thank you, Your Worship. And my statement is that every time fees and charges comes around, there is usually a robust debate that continues for about 2 hours about something like a 20% increase in the dog control fees or registration fees or something. Meanwhile, multi-million-dollar capital works blowouts get significantly less debate oftentimes. So, yep, it's a little thing, but it's very important to people. So, let's get on with it.
Can we just scroll?
Okay, second statement. Yeah, look, I think it's a gesture here, but, you know, there's so many complications here. I mean, you've got stallholders that are selling stuff online. They've got businesses as well. So, you know, then you've got people that aren't at the store that are trying to keep their cafes operating and running. So, you know, if you change the fees too much, they would feel probably rightfully offended by that because they're providing a full-time business. So it's a small movement. It is a gesture. And I don't believe it makes a huge material difference, but it is a gesture in terms of where we are trying to go with our intent in this district of moving out our markets in our district. Thank you, Mark. Your statement, please.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I just need to get some clarification in terms of regarding the storeholders verification fee. I just need to get clarified. It reads as though the storeholder needs to get a food control plan, and I'm not sure if that is correct or not. But just looking at the schedule in the agenda, so I just would like some clarification on that point, because I can see where the intention is headed. So because you see there's yeah, it just depends where the storeholder sits as to whether they are at the level where they require a food control plan or whether they're under the national program. And
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. So basically, thank you for the question. If you don't mind me answering.
Go for it.
Yeah. So that's linked to the agenda item. It's just been very clear to you where that category is and where it sits in, and it's just linking to that verification fee. So it's pegged to it when that changes. The storeholder fee changes. So
at whichever level it is.
Yeah. So, Councillor Vinson, we will enact what this says and bring it back to you for adoption, and you'll see it in the final version.
Okay. Right. So, leaving that aside, then my statement is that my preference would be for a graduated scheme for the litter fee, say starting at $200 for something like rubber, up to a shopping bag size, $300 for standard rubbish bag size, and $400 for a bootload or more, or whatever. However, I'm taking on board what Councillor Larson has said. I'm not going to vote against the motion for that reason, but I just say that would have been my preference.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, let's put it to the vote. I'll move as. Did you want to move as one to five?
I don't need one. Just check if no one else wants to speak.
Okay.
No, I've said all I want.
What's that?
Councillor Wilson Collins has her hand up.
Oh, you got your hand up there. Oh, sorry, Erin. You want to make a statement?
Sorry. My apologies. It took longer to have a cup of tea at my end of the world than it did at yours. I just would like to ask a question for clarification, if that's okay, and it might have already been covered. Just on number E, agrees to change to community housing status as detailed in attachment B. I'm just wondering, is that clear enough? Would attachment B be attached to the minutes of this meeting? Or do people need to go and look at the agenda to find out what we're actually deciding? And does it matter?
Through you, Mr Mayor, no, I don't think it does matter because what we're going to do is obviously bring that back to council with the final fees and charges document, which will be very clear to everybody based on the decisions you made today.
Okay, thank you. That was all.
Okay, let's put it to the vote. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, motion carried. So does that bring us to the end? Okay, that brings us to the end of this meeting. Thank you for your attendance and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.